Hey, my name's Joel. It's a wet Wednesday afternoon. It's the 3,049th day in a row I've run at least 3 miles. Recently I've been trying to connect with other people trying to do difficult things and run with them and have an interesting run as I can. Today's a bit of a special one. I'm doing 3 miles and you're coming with me. Let's go. Morning. Today I'm running with Mark Beaumont.
How are we doing?
What an extreme pleasure. Let's try and get down onto that trail, shall we, Mark?
On the famous Box Hill.
On the famous Box Hill, which is the
Alps of London.
part of the 2012 cycling route, the Olympic cycling route, and obviously cycling has a resonance with you somewhat.
Yeah, I'm certainly best known for life on 2 wheels rather than running, but unlike a lot of cyclists, I do actually run.
Well,
it's quite good for you.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming out with me. I hope we can try and stay on some fairly high ground here, but we're going to make this route up as we go along. Now,
it's a pretty good view.
It's beautiful. You could probably see the coast if you really tried and the weather wasn't so horrendous.
If it wasn't dreich, there's a good Scottish word for you.
Yeah, you're used to this. This is like midsummer for you.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So, Mark, if you hadn't heard of Mark, and I think you'd have to be living in an igloo somewhere not to have heard of him. He's, well, I guess you're most famous for your cycling around the world. Well, you did it twice, but the second time you did it in 78 days, which is just astounding, and I really want to ask you about that. But you're also an author, you present TV shows, you're doing a lecture tour at the moment. You're a busy guy. And I understand you studied economics at university.
Yeah, very useful.
And
very relevant.
Your career as an accountant was thwarted by a subsequent career as an adventurer. How did that all manage to happen? That's an incredible resume you have.
Well, I figured from the start, to push myself as an athlete in ultra endurance, I could, you have to do things in the right order. There's only one point in your career you can take yourself to the extremes that I have. So in my 20s and 30s, I've been, trying to break as many world firsts, world records, and, really push the envelope in terms of ultra endurance, mainly on the bike, but also a lot of ocean rowing, mountaineering, Arctic stuff. I've done a bit of running.
I really wanted to ask you about there's tons of stuff. Unfortunately, 3 miles isn't going to be enough, but
it stopped raining at least.
I'll take it. I was amazed that it was at the age of 12 you cycled across Scotland in 3 days.
Yeah, so that's where it started. And at the time it was just inspired by a newspaper article. It was just a local guy who had cycled from Land's End to John O'Groats, and I said to Mum and Dad, can I do that? And Mum rightly so pointed out that maybe I should try something smaller first, because I'd not really cycled off the farm before. And so recruited a buddy, and we pedalled across Scotland, Dundee to Oban. And by the time I was 15, I did my first 1,000 miler. That was the classic end to end. And then post university, age 22, set out to cycle around the world the first time, which, at that point was the hardest thing I'd ever done, 18,000 mile race. But, looking back, it looks, quite pedestrian compared to what we've done recently, but, a proper wild man adventure, on my own, 100 miles a day for half a year, under amazing conditions, like, through Iran, sleeping in mosques every night, and armed escort through Pakistan. I mean, it was a proper adventure.
Was that just fueled by kind of youthful exuberism at that stage? Because presumably your attitude towards risk must have changed since those early expeditions.
I don't think I've ever been particularly cavalier. I'm not an adrenaline junkie. So, you're right that there's things I did probably in the first 10 years of my career that I wouldn't do now. But mainly, oh, got a gate. Mainly some of the high altitude mountaineering and ocean rowing where, you know, it's that level of exposure. If things go wrong, you know, you tend not to come home.
Well, I read an amazing account that you wrote for the Observer or the Telegraph or somebody about what happened on your transatlantic ride.
Oh yeah, well, the capsize.
Yeah, but there must have been a few minutes there where you thought you may have been actually close to death, which is...
100%. I mean, we capsized 28 days in, so 500 miles from the finish, and yeah, nobody knew where we were. The tracker went offline. We were bobbing around, no life jackets on, in very rough seas.
And the boat could have actually disappeared, right?
Yeah. So if the boat had sunk, we would have died, 100%. But it's amazing, you know, with training and experience, you know, my mind went to a very analytical place, and, you know, we, over the next 14 hours, got rescued. But, you know, for the first 6 hours of that, trying to salvage all the kit, the EPIRBs, the sat phone, the flares, all the stuff to have us found out there. And it's only really afterwards that all the what ifs, you know, what could have happened, and you come home and there was 24 hours where Nikki, my wife, and, you know, my mum didn't know if we were alive or dead. So it was, you know, it was really scary, but at the time, you know, very much training kicked in, and I think now I've got kids.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it's not some of that risk profile I wouldn't accept now. But I mean, to go back to your point, the first time I cycled around the world, I definitely wasn't cavalier, but it was, you know, straight out of university. I was quite naive, sort of wide-eyed, exploring the world, and I think a lot of it for me was just the fear of the unknown. You know, you think you know the world from the pages of a storybook and studying, but then when you pedal across it, you know, and the expeditions have taken me to 130 countries in the last 12 years. So it gives you a very different perspective on the world, and probably a different perspective on risk.
So how did it feel when you were a 12-year-old? What was the sense of confidence that you achieved from cycling for 3 days? Because Richard Branson famously got dropped off miles away from home when he was a kid.
Oh, did he?
Made his way back. He lived not far from here.
Oh, there you go.
And I think for a child, and I say that because my daughters are 13 and 15, I'm thinking about throwing them out the car one time, but the sense of confidence must have given you that innate feeling that, well, if I could do that, I can do anything. And that must have somewhat powered certainly the 1,000-mile ride you did, and
Yeah.
your early circumnavigation.
The first ride, it was an interesting point in my life because, you know, you don't really consider your own childhood until you got your own kids, do you?
No.
And I've got 2 daughters now. We live in the middle of Edinburgh. You know, they're little socialites, play dates every day of the week.
Yeah.
That was the opposite. You know, I was homeschooled.
You grew up on a farm, didn't you?
Yeah, on a farm, middle of nowhere. Homeschooled. My 2 friends, really until I was 12, were my 2 sisters. So, you know, you go from that very sort of feral existence outside the whole time, working on the farm, never going to school. When I went, you know, the important thing is I never raced, I was never part of a club, I was never trained. You know, it was always for the love of the journey. So when I first had that idea, and then the backing of my mum at the age of 12 to cycle across Scotland, I simply wanted to, it wasn't about smashing a record.
No.
It was about just, you know, going out there, planning the trip, which I loved. The old highlighter pen and the AA road map, find the roads, and then go door to door, raise some money for some local charities, complete the journey, and then afterwards get my picture in the paper. All parts of that I loved.
You enjoyed the whole thing.
And it wasn't just the sport of it. And I think that's why I've ended up making a career in expeditions and broadcasting as opposed to just, going out there and entering events and racing people around me.
But you're not particularly interested in the race against others, more about the race against yourself, right?
Yeah, I've always been in a hurry. I'm often criticised for spoiling a good journey by going so damn fast. But
I appreciate you slowing down for this chat today.
But I mean, I'm sure you can appreciate this doing what you do. I don't think there's a speed you can go at when you're powering yourself where you're not tuned into the world around you. So I mean, take the last race around the planet, 2.5 months going at 240 miles a day. You're getting to see
Incredible.
You're going to see every sunrise and every sunset for 80 days. I mean, it's extraordinary, that sense of journey, that sense of, if you're chasing the sun around the planet, going to the east, you really do get to join up all the, the cultures, the people, the places.
That's amazing. I wanted to ask you about planning because it seems from what I've read and what I know about running myself that planning must be almost the most critical part of the success of your adventures, because 40 people were along for the ride when you ran around the world in 78 days.
So on the road at any one time there was 6 to 8. The entire project, when you think of all the performance, logistics, media over the 3 years, it was about 40 people.
That's incredible.
So I think it would be very easy just to think of it in terms of a bike race and train harder than you've ever trained before and then hope for the best when you get out there.
But you can't muscle that sort of distance. I mean, you might do it for a couple of days.
Yeah, exactly. And it can't be a battle of attrition, you can't be riding to fail. You've ultimately got to be putting in what you're taking out. My body weight stayed the same throughout.
Really?
And even though I was on the bike from 4 a.m. every day through till half past 9, 10 o'clock, it hurt like hell riding 16 hours every single day. But once you've got through the sleep deprivation and just thinking your way through the task, it's physically sustainable, and that's what we based all the plans on. There's no point in getting halfway around the world quicker than everyone's done it before.
No.
You're going to get the job done.
So did you break the whole task down into manageable chunks? People often ask me how I can run every single day for 8 and a bit years, and I just take one day at a time.
Yeah.
There's no end to it, so I just keep doing it every day, like I get up in the morning and brush my teeth. But you must have broken the whole task down into edible chunks and focused on each one. You're very good at compartmentalising, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you can picture standing on the start line in Paris, imagine, it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you've got 18,000 miles ahead of you, 29,000 kilometres, and the clock never stops.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you think about the next week or the next country or the next 2.5 months, you just crumble.
Yeah.
Whereas if I thought about the next 4-hour block, I only, quote unquote, I only needed to ride at 25 kilometres an hour average and keep the pedals turning, eat 8,000 calories a day, get 8 to 10 litres of water in me, sleep 5 hours a night. Very simple inputs to the plan. So the component parts are not particularly scary, but when you stack them up, they start to become a bit.
So how granular did you get in your planning? Were you planning down to the minute when you were going to consume your food, and you knew what was coming up next and where people were going to meet you?
There's a capacity issue, so I'm very clear that I've got one job on the road, and that's to turn the pedals. So I recruited a fantastic performance team. There was 8 or 9 of them, and so say the nutritional plan or all the performance elements in terms of how we get every aero advantage and how I tried to
Let's run to that blue van and turn around.
even though I sort of set everything up and recruited the team, when it came to the actual race itself, I tried to make sure that I was sort of on a need-to-know basis, because Otherwise you end up trying to micromanage the project from the bike.
Yes, I can't imagine. Well, that just makes eating harder, right?
Yeah. And I think there's an illusion here, you know, I get the credit for this. People see one bloke on a push bike, but you don't quite understand the scale of the 2.5 years of planning and what it actually took every day. And you know, everyone's got the macro view on the world, having pedalled around it twice. It never really adds up to the sum of its parts. It never, when you've ridden around the world, feels like you've cycled around the world. It feels like you've cycled 240 miles a day every single day for 2.5 months, which is quite a different thing.
It must give you an interesting perspective on politics and on the way people live together. Having been literally on the ground around the entire globe twice, and you took slightly different routes each time, right?
Yes.
But that must give you an amazing perspective on the similarities between people. As I've said before, that social media highlights our differences, but actually meeting individuals highlights all the things we have in common.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody on your journey was united in wishing you well and helping you. And
yeah, I mean, of course you get a few bad apples, but
were you mugged at one point in America?
Yeah, also, mugged and hit by cars and stuff, but in general, that friendship of strangers is incredible. I mean, to illustrate your point, the record before the last round the world was Cairo to Cape Town, the length of Africa. So that's a 6,000 mile race.
Right.
So I was bike packing, unsupported, carrying my tent underneath my handlebars. That bag I never unwrapped.
Really?
So riding through the Sahara, the Ethiopian highlands, you know, the great savannas of Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, Botswana, South Africa. When I got to the end of a day, you know, big days riding every day on your own, I never had to ask twice. I never had to find a second person for a place to stay or a meal to eat.
That's incredible. That's heartwarming.
It's wonderful. And I mean, we're nice enough here in Britain, but I don't think that would happen if you were cycling from London to John O'Groats.
No, indeed, it wouldn't.
So, I mean, when I spoke to journalists before that trip,
thank you.
Keep in mind that was a few years ago now. All their questions were about Ebola, terrorism, line attacks. And you know what, when I came back and said that I'd never pitched my tent because I'd been looked after so well, it wasn't quite the story they'd expected.
No, but that's the good story. That's the one that individuals will seize upon, rather than the media who want the sensationalism. That's a wonderful story. So, since we're running, I wanted to ask you about running. You've done a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
So what's your relationship with the events without any gear? Like, the thing I like about running is I just put my shoes on and go for a run, as I do every day, but you're used to having a lot of equipment around you.
Well, I mean, obviously cycling, whether you're fully supported or completely on your own, you're carrying more clobber than when you run. You know, because I travel so much,
I bet.
a pair of trainers in my suitcase is, you know, something I use all the time.
Right.
You know, I was in Australia a couple of weeks ago, touchdown, shoes on, off you go, kills the jet lag,
Great way of...
gives you a sense of where you are.
Yeah.
Find the high point, look down on the world. If I'm in a city, especially, that's always the task. Leave the hotel, trainers on, go for the high point, whatever that is. And I love it. I mean, I run at least once or twice a week. And, you know, I'm a big guy, 6'3", 90 kilos. But big riding, ultra endurance is all about not getting injured.
Right.
So ultimately, fell running in particular, off-road, really builds up the knees and the ankles. So whereas a lot of roadies would never run because it would slow them down, I do it because it gives me, you know, great all-round strength.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your conditioning training when you're not on an adventure. Like, how important is weights and cross-training? Like running, you do more for the experience than the training, I imagine. But
well, I think bang for buck, you get quite a lot from running.
yeah,
If I've only got an hour, you know, a fast hour, especially if you hit the hills or do some fartlek training, is far more effective than an hour on the bike,
Nah.
this opens the lungs up and really gets you to zone 4, zone 5, which is harder to do unless you got a watt bike. Or so bang for buck, running's superb. I tend to avoid weights. I'm a big guy and the last thing I want to do is put on muscle.
Right.
So I do a lot of core.
Yep.
Core strength, body circuits. Flexibility is pretty important, especially when you're as static as I am, stretched out across the tri-bars.
Are you in the air position all the time when you're
A lot
riding?
of the time, yeah.
Wow.
So imagine on the world that was 1,200 hours.
That makes me weak at the knees thinking about that.
But I mean, I don't know if you saw this week, I popped in to see Mr. Jamie McDonald in Gloucester Quays, who
Oh yes, I've been following him.
just broke the, well, it's not been confirmed yet, but it looks like he's broken the record for
He did 5:24.
5:24 miles on a treadmill in a week. And I mean, I can relate to suffering, but when I saw him on day 4 about to go into day 5, he was, I walked into the marquee first thing in the morning, his eyes were half shut, you could see the stride was very, very laboured, and I thought there's no way this man is going to see through another 2 and a bit days of this. And to watch on social media, the live YouTube channel, and see him, you know, go 524 miles in a week is
That's extraordinary.
an unbelievable level of suffering.
So let me ask you about suffering, because what I do, my daily thing isn't, each individual run isn't particularly difficult, it's just cumulatively it gets a bit of a challenge. But how do you compartmentalise or deal with the pain and the anguish that you go through? And presumably your mind is telling you, oh, you should stop now because it's enough, you're injuring yourself, don't run any further or don't ride any further. How do you stop your mind like that from really sabotaging you?
That's a good question. I think that anyone who does ultra running, ultra riding, any distance sports, you get a very good, you have to build a good level of body awareness. And there's a big difference between being sore and being injured.
Yeah.
So if you've not done this before, if you're new to this game, you might sort of think the first time you get sore that you have to stop. But being sore is sort of your steady state when you're doing ultra endurance, especially when you go into your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th day.
Right.
Imagine I'm like there for months. When you get your scratcher and on the bike at 4 every morning, it hurts like hell.
But does it get worse, or does it get to a point like running up a hill? I know it's horrible, but it doesn't get any more. Or does it get cumulatively worse over the
there's
78 days?
there's always niggles. So you're always battling something. Day 9 of the around the world, I crashed and fractured my left elbow. So I got fractured radial head, cracked in my left elbow.
You had dental work as well.
Yeah, so 3 very wobbly teeth and cracked my canine tooth in 2. So, it was, actually the issues off the back of that was my right knee blowing up, a lot of discomfort through the right hand side of my body because I couldn't make myself ride straight on the bike. It was just trying to protect myself.
Yeah.
Should we go down this way?
Yeah, we came up this way. I think we can just miss all this.
And to go back to that thought about how you suffer your way through it, a lot of that is experience. Knowing your mind, but also knowing that if you're having a good day, it'll get worse. If you're having a bad day, it'll get better. There's no steady state. So I think quite often, if you're not experienced at this, you think when things start to go downhill, they'll continue to go downhill.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, sleep deprivation, pain, any of the negatives. It's not a sliding scale. Things will go up and down. The body has a phenomenal ability to adapt and to cope. And it's really quite remarkable what that roller coaster is like when you live it out. So I think the first time you go there, you might stop because
that's the part we came down.
You might be tempted to stop because you've just not been there before and it feels uncomfortable and painful. I think the trick is if you're doing a short thing, like even a 10k or a marathon, something that's over in a matter of hours, then you're counting down. you're giving yourself a light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
Whereas the trick with ultra endurance is you have to wholly and fully commit to what you're doing, not the idea that it's soon going to be over. So you cannot trick yourself, you cannot give yourself a countdown. And I think some athletes just freak out at the never-endingness of that. But do you know what, when you do it well, there's a wonderful immersion in actually being properly in it, as opposed to, because when you're 2 months from the finish, so for example, you've just clocked over 9,000 miles, you're halfway around the world, you're in the middle of the outback in Australia, you're not thinking about Paris.
No.
You cannot possibly give yourself that as a carrot.
Yeah.
So the stick is the fear of failure, the fact that you've built so much success. The more success, the more you have to lose.
Yep.
So, I think negative motivation, what you're running away from, what you're, the accountability you give yourself is so important in the middle of a race, because ultimately it's what sees you through. Don't give me some crap inspirational quote in the middle of a race. I don't know what to do with that. Tell me the consequence of failing, and I'm absolutely out of bed and back on the bike.
Fascinating. I wanted to ask you before we finish up, because we're getting towards the end, sadly. I could run on and on and on, but how do your sponsors figure into your life? You're sponsored by On Running, I know, and I've been reading a lot about their stuff. I mean, do they fund everything, or do they just give you some free gear, or how does the sort of economics of what you do work?
So in the big expeditions, the big projects are all sponsored by different companies.
Yeah.
The talk tour I'm on at the moment, as you say, On are a big part of it. The likes of Van Gogh and Leadership Challenges, Altura.
Yeah.
They'll buy into specific projects I'm doing if it speaks to their market.
Right.
There'd be no sense in On sponsoring a cycle around the world because they're, a running brand.
Yep.
But because I'm doing a lot more adventure racing, trail running, cross training, I'm doing some marathons this year. Perfect.
Right.
That's for their audience. But, of course, I look like the guy who never got a job. But the reality is, this is my career.
Yeah.
I've got a team that work with me, huge projects, sometimes quite big budgets. So you've got to, every year in every project is like a startup. You've got to recruit the team, you've got to build the finance, you've got to find the right partnerships. And that's a tough game, that's where a lot of sporting ambitions fail, certainly professionally, because most people are good at what they say they can do, but it's quite hard to get these projects to the start line. And it's amazing. Some of the sponsors like Artemis and LDC have worked with me for over 10 years, and I simply wouldn't be able to do what I do without that.
And you must be part salesman as well as part adventurer. You've got to persuade people that this is an endeavour that's going to be successful, it's going to reflect well on their brand, and you've got to pull it off at the end of the day. I had one question which I think is very important, is how do you get your wife to stop killing you for taking all these crazy risks? When she found out you were bobbing around in the Atlantic with your 3 friends in an extremely precarious situation, my wife would have killed me if I even thought about doing that.
It's you cannot do anything on this scale. You can't make a career out of this without the love and the blessing from those close to you. My mum works full time with me. Nikki, my wife, I've got 2 beautiful daughters, supports me well. But Nikki and I are very different animals. She's an artist. She's incredibly creative. She's fit, but she's certainly not an athlete. And she's got no reference point really for what I do from personal experience. So I think her support is very unconditional in the true sense of the word. She doesn't support me from a starting point of knowing what I do and something she could do herself. She trusts me because it's what I've always done, and she respects the fact it's my job. So I think that's very healthy, having that degree of separation. We're not fighting for the same space. We actually lead very different lives, but as a team and as parents, I think we're a great unit. The reality is, I travel a lot, and I try and bring my family with me as much as I can. Little Harriet's 5, I think, and about to turn 6, and I've been to 15 countries, and
that's amazing.
Genuinely already has a view on the world.
I think we're going to head off in the wrong direction if we go that way. Well, I think part of my daily running thing was to encourage my daughter Sasha and Tara to...
Oh, you got 2 girls too?
Yeah.
Takes a real man.
I believe that. But they're delightful, but they tend to be lazy. So it's much easier to sit in front of a Switch or a PlayStation and get out and do something difficult.
Yeah.
So I think extremes, as you were just saying, I went even away from your wife for 78 days, reuniting must be delightful.
Yeah.
It's like getting super cold. When you get warm, it's lovely.
That's a nice analogy. I've never thought about it that way. And I think time away makes our marriage and our relationship all the better. You know, you justify where you end up. But I always think that if I was doing a 9 to 5 at home, we wouldn't have the connection that I do. Because we really do, you know, respect and look after each other because...
You value your time.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, that
was a run around an unknown part for me.
No kidding, that was fabulous.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. I always figure the best way of talking to people about running is to do it whilst running. And thank you so much for coming out. You're fast becoming a national treasure, I think.
5.3k, does that count for your daily mileage?
That's my 3.3 miles. That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Superb.
Really interesting, fascinating. Good luck with your...
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I love it.
If I can't stop, the spell will be broken and I'll never run again. But, so you're in Andover tonight, I believe. You've got a bunch more dates on your speaking tour?
Yeah, we've got sold out event tonight, seven events in, and I really enjoy it. It's wonderful going out and meeting all the people who have been, I call it virtual peloton, the people who have backed the journey and been a part
well,
of it.
I'll be hanging along at the back from now on, but what's your charity and how do people feel moved to raise money or to donate money, and I'm certainly going to.
Good on you.
Where can you go? To your website, I guess?
Yeah, so my website's just my name, markbeaumontonline.com. And the charity that I work with very closely is called Orchid Studio, which it is what it says in the tin. Works with a lot of children and young people, and on the website, find out, support them. I've worked with them for the last 10, 11 years. They do wonderful work.
I encourage everybody to do that, and thank you very much. And if you like this, don't forget to subscribe and comment and all that sort of stuff. Thank you very much.
Keep running.
Once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, love.